So thank you again, everyone, for joining this week's Encinitas Viewpoint. My name is Cindy Cremona, and I will be moderating. We will be discussing Encinitas issues with our panel and occasional guests. We'll have 2 meetings a month until Election Day in November, and they will be every other Thursday at 6 p.m. So we hope you'll join us and that you will join us often. We'll have a period for questions towards the end of the discussion. At that time, press the participant button at the bottom of your screen to access the hand icon, and you'll raise your hand virtually. And I'll unmute you for your question.
Just go somewhere else.
Please state your name and the community you live in before asking your question. Let's keep it polite and on topic, please, for tonight. There's just too many people. And if not, you may be muted or removed from the program. I'll try to get to as many of you as I can. And if I don't, please don't hesitate to contact the candidates directly through their websites, email, or social media. Tonight, we have as our guest, Bruce Ehlers, to discuss the Goodson Project in Olivenhain. Bruce is a 36-year resident and is currently chairman of the Planning Commission. Thank you, Bruce, for joining us. Bruce has been defending our community character from overdevelopment for over 20 years. He authored Prop A, Encinitas' Right to Vote initiative, defended our community character on the mayor's housing task force, and promoted the adoption of the Citizens Participation Program, or CPP. In his day job, Bruce is a senior VP of engineering for a residential securities electronics company. Next, I will introduce our panel. First up is Julie Thunder, who is running for mayor. Hi, Julie. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Cindy. And thanks everybody for coming. I'm so excited that so many people showed up. This is going to be really amazing. And I'm thankful to the people who came up with this idea for us to do this. I'm an independent with no allegiance to a political party. I've lived here in the same place over 35 years because I love it. And I care deeply about my friends and all the people who live here. I get it when people say they love it here, but things are changing too quickly. Or I miss the casual beach town vibe. Or our town seems so divisive now. So let's take Encinitas back and slow things down, get national politics out of our local decisions, and get us back on track to saving our beach town charm. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Susan, you are up next. Susan Turney is the candidate for City Council District 2. Hi, Susan. Can you also tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I feel like we threw a party and all the guests showed up, so it's great. I've been active in Encinitas politics for over 15 years on a variety of issues. I led the passage of Prop A together with a huge team of wonderful volunteers. It's an initiative that gives us the right to vote on zoning and how our city grows. I'm running now because I don't find that the council listens to us. I see projects and programs forced over the objections of residents, and at the same time, simple infrastructure and safety measures are going ignored. So by electing a new council, we can right the situation and represent residents over special interests. That's my goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next, I'd like to introduce Alex Riley, who served with the San Diego Lifeguards for 19 years and is a candidate for District 1 City Council. Alex, you're up.
Hi, I'm Alex Riley. I'm running mainly because I want to continue serving the public. As Cindy said, I was a lifeguard for 19 years. My my career ended a little early due to injuries, and I see now things going on in our neighborhoods and streets that need our attention as well. And I feel like I've got the experience to help this city just like I helped San Diego. We are at a very crucial time in our town where if we don't slow the roll of development, we're going to lose what we all came here for in the first place. I live in Leucadia, but I know there's problems right across the town from here all the way to Olivenhain that all need attention, and it's gone too long. and we need to preserve the last of our open space. I feel like that gets lost a lot in all this discussion about development.
Thanks, Alex. We'll get right to it and start the discussion with Bruce. Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about the Goodson Development Project?
Yeah, and I'm going to share my screen. I've got a short PowerPoint, and so let me switch over to that and do a quick share screen. Bam. And if everything goes well, you should be able to. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, today I want to go through the Malt Goodson ultra high density apartment tower that's being proposed in Olevenheim. I'll take about 5 to 6 minutes to go through this. The idea is to get everybody up to speed on what is in the current proposal. So the project proposes 283 for-lease units on about 6 net acres, which if you calculate is over 47 dwelling units an acre. It claims use by right, and that's a new state law that if they set aside a certain threshold of affordable units, it becomes I'll call it a rubber stamp or a minimal review by the city council and by the planning commission, and the developer is asking to do it by right. It uses the California state density bonus law, and on top of the already 30 units per acre, it gets to go for another 35 bonus density units. That's how it gets all the way up to 283. And the interesting thing is no additional affordable units are required for that density bonus because they get to double count. They count once, the very same unit counts for the by right, and the same units count for the density bonus. The height exceeds the Encinitas Municipal Code of 39 feet maximum on the R30, up to 69 feet through a waiver process under the California density bonus law. The stories similarly exceed the 3 limits and are up to 6 or 7 depending on who's counting and how they're counting. But it looks like 7, it's certainly at minimum 6. The building area, just to give you an idea of the size of this building, it's 529,000 square feet. Imagine that being 5 times the square footage of the Home Depot. 5 times the square footage. The project, well, for this, the project provides 42 low or lower income, I should say, actually low income, which is 80% of the median family income. For this year, the median family income is 92,000 in the county of San Diego, so it's 80% of 92,000. But it also is graded by number of household members, and so there's a whole matrix we could share later if we want to. If you calculate 42 out of 283, that's only 14.8% of the units are affordable. And if you break down and look at those 42, 14 of them are called junior 1-bedroom, and they're essentially small efficiency apartments. They're 495 square feet. So what we're providing for the affordable units are generally at the bottom of the size and complexity or niceness. They're not the ones at the top, and it's not even spread evenly, because out of the mix, there's junior 1-bedrooms, there's 1-bedrooms, there's some 2-bedrooms, and there's only 2 3-bedrooms in the mix out of that 42. So if you go back and you look at how we got here, when the city was going through the housing element, 149 affordable units were assigned to this property. And what we're getting 42, we're netting 42 out of it, and that leaves a deficit of 107 affordable units that will be deducted from the Measure U buffer. And the buffer is 500. So I think, Susan, you know the exact number.
It's 363.
Sorry, 363. And per California law, once that buffer is depleted, the city only has 180 days to upzone more land. That's another new California state housing law. So they're clamping down, taking more and more of our local control away. I'll continue. So this is a very car-centric development out in Olevenheim, away from mass transit, away from really even regular bus routes. It is underparked and by 165 spaces. And that number is directly from the developer's plans. It's not mine making it up. That's him saying that's how far it's underparked. So we know that project cars will park off-site in nearby neighborhoods throughout Olevenheim, wherever it's within walking distance. The project traffic will add up to 2,800 average daily trips to an already congested intersection there in both Encinitas Boulevard and Rancho Santa Fe Road. And probably the worst thing is it significantly worsens the potential choke point in the event of a wildfire evacuation. So I've kind of described what it is. Next, we'll take a look at where it goes and some pictures of, wow, sorry, I forgot the status. Status is it's gone through several submissions, and each time it's submitted, the city reviews the application to determine whether it's complete. The first application was in October, deemed incomplete. Second application in January, deemed incomplete. The third application came in April and was just deemed incomplete, I think last week or maybe the week before, I'm not quite sure. And so we expect the next submission could happen anytime, but probably we're going to guess in the August timeframe. And at that point, it's getting closer and closer to the city approving it, or I should say deeming complete, not approving. Then it starts a very, because of this by right, it starts a very controlled and accelerated approval timeline. And as I say, a lot of the discretion of the city has been taken away by that state law. So where's it located? It's located off the corner, off of Encinitas Boulevard, but also bordering on Rancho Santa Fe Road. You see the yellow. It's nestled in half-acre zoning. You see all the housing around it to the west, to the north, to the east, are all half-acre zone houses in Olevenheim. And the underlying land was originally zoned half-acre. To the south, there's some very light commercial or retail, you know, the 7-Eleven, Original Pancake House, you can see it there for yourself. So next, it literally towers over the neighbors. And this is ERRD is the Encinitas Residents for Responsible Development. This is the group that's formed to oppose this project. I'm a member of them, I'm not on the board, but ERRD hired a professional architecture firm to put together an accurate rendering of the elevation. And in case you didn't notice, I don't know if my cursor works, but this is the 7-Eleven right here. You see it's towering 4 or 5 stories above the 7-Eleven, and at most between, and at most between the 7-Eleven and this building is a driveway. So the setback is minimal, and here you go straight up that many. It obstructs the views from these neighbors' houses up the hill, both this first level and ones you don't see off to the left. They're now looking at apartments, straight into apartments. It shadows it. You can't see it in this view, but it shadows the properties to the north. It actually sticks out north into right next to and it's on 2 sides of one neighbor. This is isometric simulation. It shows that the building is completely out of character in bulk and mass. Just, you know, words can't even describe how out of place this project will be on that lot. So I want to go a step back and say, hey, what was it zoned for prior to Measure U? Because I think it's important to keep that in mind. Prior to Measure U, it's 6 acres net. You know, you always take out from the gross, you take the road dedication, the natural steep slope, and it's zoned RR2 or was zoned RR2. That means maximum of 2 per acre, but 3 years ago, prior to this council, we used to approve projects at mid-range density. And in this case, it would have been 1.5 per acre, which meant 9 homes with half-acre minimum lots, and of course, a 30-foot height limit. That's what it was before. And you've already seen what it was after. So Measure U was defeated due to the Prop A vote, but it was overturned, or I should say injunctive relief was granted so that the city could adopt Measure U without our Prop A vote. And that's what caused this R30, which is 25 to 30 units per acre. And you can see the gross acreage, that's where you got the 209 units. and then add that density bonus on top, that's how you get to the 283. So we went from 9 to 283. You imagine being the neighbor of that project. Your property values just dropped like a rock. And one final note, just to, this, to wrap it all up, it may get worse in the future. There's another new California law passed this year. Before, you could only have ADUs in Encinitas on single family lots used for single family. But the California law now allows it on multifamily. Up to 25% additional units may be converted from common space and parking. So that means some of the common space can be taken away, converted to additional units. Some of the parking can be taken away and does not have to be replaced. So the parking could get worse, and that could result in an additional 70 units sometime in the future, up to 353, all in that same space. So that's it in a nutshell. Hopefully I didn't take too long.
Thanks, Bruce. Can you tell us a little bit about Goodson, the developer?
I mean, I've known of Randy and met Randy starting in 2004. And he also was behind, well, his claim to fame, and I'm speaking for him, in lieu of him. I'm sure he could do a better job. But his claim to fame is he was the developer behind San Elijo Hills. So he was the entitled that property. But he also was the developer behind Lilac Ranch, which got defeated by a ballot initiative. And again, and I forget the name of the current rendition, it got defeated again. And then recently the supervisors took it off the plan. He is one of the principals, along with Simon Malk, and on Accretive Capital Partners. And they've owned this land since roughly 2005.
Thanks, Bruce. I think we'll let our panel jump in. I'm sure they have a lot to say and maybe ask.
I have something. Bruce, you mentioned shadowing. What about the homes next to the Goodson project? If they have solar panels and now they're likely to be living in the shadow of this thing, is there any compensation for them, or is there anything in our city code?
Nothing in our city code would protect their sun, access to sun today. So, and the ones on the north side, certainly, I don't know. I have not looked at their solar installations, but certainly a good part of their backyard will be in some shadow due to this project.
Would it be possible for you to, and I know this is putting you on the spot, to wildly guesstimate the loss in property values to the homes that are nearby this?
I don't know that I know I wouldn't buy a house next to this. Let me put it that way. And so anytime you take the market, it's got to be in the hundreds of thousands, I would believe, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. It's so disappointing to me.
Yeah.
So one thing I'll step in with, this is one of 15 Measure U properties. And so the first 5 that are being proposed right now that are in the application process, this is one of the 5, actually not only really quickly eats through the buffer, but puts us in the red by 107 units before we even get into the next cycle. And the city is aware of the situation. There was a recent article, Bruce and I worked with the reporter for many hours to provide him city information so that he could put the article together. But the upshot was that the city is not admitting that they will in fact need to upzone in the next cycle because these projects are not yet officially approved. So that's a really absurd technical point. They will be approved at some point soon. We will be in the hole soon. We will need to upzone within the 180 days as soon as the deficiencies are identified. And that means looking for new parcels around the city. And if I could share real quick, I put together an interactive map. Let me get to the sharing here, that we can send out after the meeting. And let me grab that. I hope you all can see this. So using city data, I wanted to show a citywide view of the impacts, not just the parcels. So if you click on any one of these, the information on the left will change. It'll give you the APN, the location number, the actual street address, the potential for units with density bonus, the additional daily car trips just on and off that property with the density bonus units. Most of the projects are coming in already density bonus. So the city makes an assumption of 0 density bonus units because they say they don't really know one way or the other if they're going to come through claiming density bonus, but history and the present tell us that they will. And there's also the number of affordable units and the minimum number of units. And again, these are all the city's numbers, so you can go through, click on any of these, the numbers change. And then just real quick, just to piggyback on this, I'm going to share, let's see here. Can you see the Excel here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what this is these are the first 5 sites along the left side in column A. These are the number of units per the city for that property, the base number of units. The city is claiming that every one of these properties units are going to be 100% affordable. We know that's not true. They're coming in at, 20% max affordable and sometimes less. These are the affordable numbers proposed by the developer. So here we have the Goodson 149 down to 42. Hector, the city claimed that we would get 246 affordable units. That's what they told the state. That's what they told us. Hector Fox Point Farms came in just recently at just proposing 39 units. So you can see the shortfall in the yellow column. So we've got the total potential number of units from the city. We've got the affordable number of units from the city. The two are equal. We've got the number of affordable proposed by the developer. This is our buffer, 363, and this is our shortfall just off the first 5 projects with 10 more to follow. So it's a pretty it's a dire situation, it's a deceptive situation, and it's a real shell game. And I believe that we need to look more closely at how we're following the law, how we're interpreting the law, and how we're implementing it here in Encinitas for the least possible impact, not as we're seeing the most possible negative impact.
Can you talk about what we could do at the state level to fight this? Because I think that's what we need to be doing.
Absolutely needs to be fought at the state level. So Julie, Alex, and I are all a member of a group called Livable California. I know we've got some members of Livable also on the phone. Thanks for the reminder, Bruce. And they're actually cities up and down the coast, 150 people on the call per week, electeds. The mayor of Redondo Beach is on, Beverly Hills, all the way up to Cupertino, Yorba Linda. And they're all putting together legislation to push back against these really onerous mandates that make no sense and that want to take away local control. There are some bills that want to outlaw single family zoning, which is really outrageous. And so this group is a really strong working group, and they're able to push back and curtail some of these more outrageous plans that are bills that are coming through. So there is hope. There is hope, and folks like Julie, Alex, and I are, I think, part of the solution there.
Like a possible recommendation would go back to that density bonus. You know how I pointed out that they double counted the units. So what that meant is the developer got a 35% increase in the size of this project and provided no additional affordable units. Well, that shouldn't be allowed. And that's something that the state legislature needs to go fix.
Yeah.
But we need council members that will go and fight that.
Yeah, I definitely have the political will to do so. And I
Yes.
think the other two do too.
Hey, Bruce, I've got a question for you. As a kind of public safety guy and someone that's been trained to do assessment and mitigation, at what point will the fire department get to share their views? That just looks like a terrible choke point to me if there was a wildfire east of the project.
Well, that in fact is probably the best argument against the size and impact of this project. The review that the city is allowed to apply Certainly where it comes down to public safety, that's one of the 2 or 3 allowed review points. And so if the council or commission, in making the decision, decide that it is a public safety hazard of a sufficient threshold, then they could deny based on that. So that actually the fire chief will have a very big input. There's a group that formed in Olevenheim, and it's really under the part of the, not part of the city, it's working with the city, called the Olevenheim Fire Safe Council. And we, that's one of the jobs they'll look at, is the safety, overall fire safety. But this certainly should be one of the items there. And I know ERRD is looking very closely at traffic simulations. In addition to doing the elevations and pictures, we're also looking at traffic and a few other things, safety being one of the main topics to review.
Bruce, a resident of Olevenheim told me today that Olevenheim has a 4-hour evacuation schedule. I'm not sure where that comes from, but
Yeah.
it seems like adding almost 300 units is adding 500 plus people. It would change that significantly.
Well, I think another way I always like to look at it at households. If you look at overall, Encinitas is around 26,000 households. Olevenheim is somewhere in the 1,700 to 2,000 range. So this is adding more than 10% to Olevenheim. So it's 10 or 12% of Olevenheim additional. So that it's a pretty significant bump. It's not like it's the 9 houses, or even some of the previous proposals were a senior living facility, all much smaller. So
And you have livestock as well. So if you have folks moving out their horses and their livestock, that also takes a lot of space, and those vehicles are very slow.
yeah, I remember it wasn't I forget which fire it was, watching 13th Street as they were evacuating people and livestock, and it was backed up quite often during the evacuation.
Mhm.
I think it bears mentioning that currently there's only 2 firefighters in Olevenheim working out of a rented station with a rented truck, actually. So any of their backup would have to use the same road that would be the evacuation route as well.
Yeah, well, there is a gate in the back, not in the back end, but to Carlsbad, and some of the coverage from the far back end of Carlsbad, of Olevenheim, used to come from the station that was over. They moved it out further on Rancho Santa Fe Road. I'm not familiar right now with the evacuation timing or the fire coverage, but there is a gate on, I forget the name of the road, towards the end of Lone Jack.
Bruce, I'd like to get back to the project. There's Dan Vaughn, who is the president of Olevenheim Town Council, and Juliana Maxim both talked about at a city council meeting that there was a last minute change to the municipal code that had to do with lot consolidation. And somehow this change has affected the increased size of the project. Can you define that?
I don't think it didn't affect the size. What it affected was the amount of review. So there was a change to the lot consolidation law, and it was presented to the Planning Commission as code cleanup, that it would bring it more in line with the current state laws, and make it. And in fact, it was presented in the record to us as being more like Solana Beach, more like Carlsbad. What was neglected to point out, was not pointed out, is that it had ramifications on projects like these, because prior to this new method of consolidating lots, this project and probably others similar to it would have to go through a subdivision or a State Map Act change that would automatically and mandatorily trigger a CEQA EIR type of review. And if that was triggered, the by right would not trump that. It would have had to have happened. And so as soon as you get into the EIR, traffic study, safety certainly, environmental, parking, all the items you would find in a standard EIR would be subject to review in front of the Planning Commission and appealable then to the City Council. And what upset me and pissed me off, quite frankly, was that the information that they would have ramifications of this project was never disclosed to the Planning Commission. Now, it may have, and I've heard mixed stories, and I wasn't on City Council, I didn't watch it, whether they knew ahead of time. But bottom line is that should have been in the staff report. That should have been disclosed, the ramifications of this law change.
Mhm. Is that going to affect any other projects?
Anyone that has a lot consolidation involved in it, probably quite a few of the 15.
I think there's at least 2
Parcels.
more.
So 3 total.
I believe so. It looks like it on the map.
I'd have to go back and look.
And lastly, on that same topic, wasn't that item added in the consent calendar, which limits the amount of discussion?
Well, it doesn't limit it because anybody can pull it. And I'm not sure that it was, it may have been the second time it came through, it was on the consent calendar, but we did discuss it. There was a full staff report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
At least in the Planning Commission, it was. And then it, of course, went to its, since it's a municipal code change, it went to the City Council. So the Planning Commission makes their zoning recommendation or their any code change that we see, and then it goes, ultimately, it is the City Council adopting it.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Susan, you spoke about being in a deficit for those projects of about 170 low-income units. How does that happen if the developers are building with the promise for low-income housing? How come they're not kept to the standard? How is it allowed, I guess, is just the question.
Right, and I'm open to correction from Bruce, but they don't come in proposing an amount of affordable housing they're going to provide. The city makes the assumption and sends it to the state. And then the developers come forward with their projects. And I'm not sure how that sausage gets made where they get to not build what the city signed them up for.
And maybe this is a good place. Can I jump in?
Yes.
And kind of give the framework on how the housing law from the state of California works and how it's called Regional Housing Needs Assessment, RHNA, Regional Housing, RHNA, RHNA. You'll hear RHNA all the time. And so the Housing and Community Development Department, HCD, which is up in Sacramento, they determine based on what growth they see, through whatever survey they use, I don't even know, but they assign the number of additional units each county needs. And those are called RHNA numbers, and they're assigned to San Diego. And our regional planning board is called SANDAG. It's a San Diego group, area governments or something like, I don't even know what the acronym is, but SANDAG. Each county or each area has their own. And then SANDAG allocates it to the different cities. And so we got our upzoning requirement for this housing element cycle, the new one, which is called the 6th cycle, starting soon here, that we're going to go through. And we also got it from SANDAG for the 5th, which is really the one we're talking about now. And so if I went back 10 years ago and the SANDAG numbers came out, you would hear the state agency say, you don't have to build these. You just have to zone for the capacity to build them. And what's been happening over the last decade is more and more it's becoming enforced, and there's more and more enforced. And quite frankly, it's getting more egregious and more beneficial to the developer with higher densities. What used to be 25% density bonus went to 35% density bonus. You're seeing all these new laws by right that make it easier to get stuff through. And so it's becoming more and more lucrative for the developers. But the bottom line is it's a 2-step process. RHNA says you have to zone for it. And now there's a new law called, and it's about a year old, no net loss. It says once you build it, once the project is approved, then you have to make sure you have buffer to make up anything that didn't become lower income. So every one of these projects are, we call them affordable. They're not really affordable. They're really market rate with 15% typically affordable. That means for every one of these projects, 85% of the RENA number has to be made up and either out of the buffer, which as Susan clearly showed, will be gone here within a year, year and a half, maybe at the most, maybe less. And it will be rezoning to backfill the 85% from each one of those developments. So
That's the rub, Bruce, because
yeah, it's a shell game. It's a Ponzi scheme is what I call it.
yeah, and when we speak out against it, we're criticized by not being for affordable housing.
I think
And-
Juliana Maxim says it best. I love how she says it. It's really a very inefficient way of trying to get lower income housing. You're building 6 market rates. You're giving 6 market rate for every 1 affordable you get, roughly. And that's about what happens. So we're increasing our densities incredibly, where I'll take the last housing cycle. Let's take this housing cycle. 1,500 homes, right? Is how much upzoning or how many additional units or unit capacity we have to have zoned. 1,500 homes divided by the 25,000 we have, you know, you're 7 or 8% population increase in the city of Encinitas. But then the next cycle, 85% of that 7% will have to be made up again on top of the new requirement. 2 cycles from now, 85% of that 85% will get added into 85% of the previous. And you can see it's a geometric, and it's going to end up that 7%, which sounds modest and reasonable, is quickly going to get to 10, 20, 30, 40% increases in our population and in our households.
Unless we
Unless-
have, our city participates with these other cities that are
Yes.
forming now to push back against the state.
I agree.
And that's what I've already, this group has been very generous to myself and Susan and Alex in allowing us to join them, even though we're not yet in office, because they've seen what's happening in San Diego and they're happy to have members from San Diego County in with them.
Yeah, you're talking about livablecalifornia.org.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a call out group call for the electeds that they've allowed us to join. So we're hearing firsthand every week from mayors and other council members about what's happening in their city.
And are
And
these
it's-
just Southern California? Are they Central
No,
Coast? North?
California,
Statewide.
Statewide, yeah.
Does this-
statewide. So and people have to realize with the tiny amount of affordable units we're gonna get, we're sacrificing our whole town for that. So when you hear somebody say, and rightfully so, but I want my children to be able to afford to live here. Me too, we all do. There's nobody that doesn't want that. There's nobody that doesn't want restaurant workers in downtown to be able to have a place in town to live. I in particular, my daughter's waitress for a long time when they were in college. But we're not gonna get there with this, and we're sacrificing our town for something that we won't get. And the few affordable units that we will get, the competition to get those is gonna be sky high. And it doesn't appear, there's no state agency managing those. So it's gonna be who you know. And yeah, it's not gonna, I don't believe it can be fair. I don't see how it can be. There's nobody governing that.
Can city governments push back on all of these developments that are in the negative, asking them to come back with plans that have more affordable units?
Well, we can certainly tighten up our municipal code and reverse that lot consolidation. We can require a higher minimum of affordable units. We can go back, not allow Prop A to be invalidated for the future.
Why
And
isn't that
limit-
happening now?
Pardon?
Why isn't that happening now?
There's no
Because
will.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, there's no will to do it. We've got the open sign on for every developer in California.
So I got a good story there too. Back on Measure T, the chair of the Planning Commission went out and looked at these affordable housing overlay zones, these R30s. And other cities have higher inclusionary rates for those overlay zones than they do for a standard building. So if you had a standard apartment building going in at the normal density, on an R25 lot, you would have to put, in our city, you have to put 15% aside for lower income. And on an R30, we are only requiring 15%. And one of the best authorities in the state, a lawyer that we've hired and was giving us advice, made the comment during the Planning Commission meeting that it's fairly common, quotes, fairly common to have a higher inclusionary requirement on these overlay zones. And Glenn, I won't take credit for the idea, Glenn O'Grady did it back in the last Measure T cycle, could not get traction with the council in power for Measure T. We talked about it at the Planning Commission, and I even came to the city council and proposed it there. In fact, it got to the point where I actually brought in a recording of Barbara Couts, the lawyer, saying it's fairly common. And she is, I mean, I go to planning conferences where she is the #1 authority in the housing element law in the state. And, she is one of, I think the HCD department had said, she's one of 5 people they have review their new interpretations. I mean, she is that preeminent. And the mayor in particular questioned her for 15 minutes. And at the end said, hey, that's new news. We've had this information. Glenn, 4 years ago, had shown examples. I showed the same examples. And then we did go the next step and we did a nexus study. The city, I should say, did a nexus study and showed in the data, even with I'll call it a development-friendly nexus study, that you could go up easily to 20% and probably to 25% and still have all your documentation to meet that nexus study, yet we haven't done it. And so there's an example where instead of getting 42, we could get another 10%, not 10% of 42, but we could get another 30 probably, and get 72 on here. And it's certainly very lucrative because you see how quickly now, I call it a gold rush. There's been a gold rush to get these projects through. So
I was told by somebody on Livable that Encinitas is now known as friendly to developers. And that was somebody in another city. I can't prove that, but what you have to consider when something like this happens and we have a rush on these projects, that something's going on.
Well, there's a local developer, New Urban West, and they've done a lot of big projects in the area. I was in a meeting where they told us directly, Encinitas is known to developers as the density bonus magnet. And you don't get a name for yourself like that for nothing. So that was kind of interesting coming from him. But wondering about this definition of affordable housing that we throw out a lot, and that has to do with people hear affordable housing. Wow, that's great. Let's do affordable housing. I think that 80% adjusted median income you talked about, Bruce, it means basically that a family of 4 would have to be earning about $73,000 a year to qualify for low income. So just as a very broad a measure for folks who are wondering about that.
I'm curious, does this mean that all of our open space is up for grabs? Because that's what I think I'm hearing.
Yes. Absolutely. And with the bills coming down from Sacramento, it's going to get worse. The house next door to you is up for grabs. The houses on both sides are up for grabs. It's happening in LA right now. They're building big 4-plex boxes in these older neighborhoods. And talk about the opposite of white flight. These older established neighborhoods are getting that, but they're having a whole turnover, a racial turnover, because white people are actually moving in to predominantly Black or brown neighborhoods, and it's just completely changing it. The exact opposite of what they wanted to happen is happening.
It's not
gentrification. Happen. I don't know.
Can somebody explain the current laws, the proposed laws that Scott Wiener is proposing, and in particular the 4-8-plex changes that would affect single family housing And in Encinitas in particular? It's not law yet, but
No, they're looking at, yeah, properties, if you're on, if you have property of a certain size, and it's not, doesn't have to be a very big size, it's considered what they call an infill opportunity. And so the setbacks are smaller, the zoning changes, so that what could be a fourplex, each one gets each one gets an accessory dwelling unit. So it pops up to 8 units on the property. It's this multiplier effect where it's kind of feeling the way the state is positioning these bills. No one is safe. No property is safe. You think you've got your house on your property and you are an infill opportunity. And I can tell you, you may decide you want to live here forever. You're not going to move, but your neighbor may take money and run. And the next thing you know, the neighborhood starts, it's actually not even gentrification in some of the higher density neighborhoods where folks are coming in and rebuilding these units. It's actually displacement. I did want to get that point in. They talk about that on a lot of the livable calls.
Since I live on a really nice property off Saxony, I have had firsthand experience with an ADU just built right next to me. So where when I bought a mile from the ocean, thinking I had a little peace and quiet on either side, I have new neighbors right on top of me. We can hear everything they do in and out of their home.
Oh,
It's just, I mean, and they don't have to inform you. You don't have any rights when it comes to these types of developments. So anybody, it can happen to anybody, and I would agree with you.
I'm curious, Cindy, how big of a ADU is it? 1-story or 2-story?
1 story.
And
One bedroom.
how big is it compared to the house it's associated with?
Maybe half the size. I think it's 800 square feet. My home is 1,100 square feet.
You're
And
very fortunate because the council, contrary to the planning commission recommendation, basically when we adopted the updated ADU ordinance, I should say when the planning commission recommended it, we capped the size of the ADUs, I want to say at 1,000 square feet, and ratioed it to the main unit, because the concept of an accessory dwelling unit is that it's accessory to the main house. And the state law will allow it to go up higher. And the council, the majority, I think unanimous, in fact, I have to go back and look, but it was certainly majority, throughout our recommendation of what the planning commission had recommended. This is last year, I wasn't even chair, and they basically said the house could be the same up to a certain square footage, and I want to say 1,200 square feet.
1,200 square feet.
1,200 square feet, and be the same size as the main house, and it could be 2 stories.
So could I cut us off and ask for Q&A?
Yes,
Folks are
yes,
waiting,
that was we're getting a little short on time, but thank you, Bruce. And yes, I guess I am lucky. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. You can find the hand icon button on your screens. And then I will look around and try to find whoever might have any questions to anyone on our panel. So any questions?
Looks like
All right.
Leah has.
Leah has, if you can find, there we go, there's Leah.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
I have a simple question because I think I know the answer, but a lot of us are new to zoning, so it's really helpful to have details. Would you explain what when you say upzoning, what that means? Thank you.
Want me to take it, or anybody?
Sure.
go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, when we say upzoning, we mean increasing the number of units allowed on a parcel or group of parcels. And that's exactly the language out of Prop A. So what we did in 2013, when the majority of the voters passed Prop A, is we made it mandatory for a vote of the people when any increase in density of zoning, and the definition is, as I said, increasing the maximum number of units allowed on a parcel or group of parcels, that would trigger a vote, and that's upzoning.
Thanks,
I'll
Leah.
just remind you that Prop A was invalidated in order to get through Measure U. So our votes were overturned twice.
Be careful in saying invalidated. It really wasn't invalidated. It was stayed for this housing cycle only.
Leah, did you have a question on top of that?
The lawyers in the audience will care.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Let me see. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. And that is, I just want to clarify, what I heard you say is, normally, if you consolidate units, which happens a lot, you consolidate parcels in order to do one of these big projects. If you'd consolidated the parcel, there would be a requirement for an environmental impact report. But under this new zoning lot consolidation rule, that's not required. Did I understand that correctly?
Basically, yes. Yeah, in other words, the project would have, if the project had included the subdivision map act, because they were using the old method of consolidating, it could not use by right to get around the environmental review. I don't know that it would always require an environmental review, but the project cannot circumvent the EIR if it had to go through the California Map Act and subdivision. But the way you said, a very simplified approach, but yeah, I think you got the gist of it.
Cindy, my friend Lori was waving her hand. She wasn't, can you, Lori Michaels, are you able to find her and unmute her?
I'm sure we can. There you are. Hold on. I see you, Lori. Okay, go ahead.
I notice looking at all of those logged in, it's people who are for us and people who are against us. I want to know how we can get to the people who are uninformed. That's my comment. My question is mostly to Susan, because I'm in District 2, and I know this is off subject a little bit, but it's important. I noticed that Kelly supports Strode, which is a street road where they're trying to take some of the traffic areas, specifically on 101, and moving them to the neighborhoods to kind of just disperse the traffic. I'd like to hear Susan's comment on that, because I know Kelly has commented that she supports that.
Yeah, so I learned from someone in my district that she supports the notion of something called a Strode, S-T-R-O-A-D, and sent a link to one of our voters in our district. And it actually goes to a website that shows a grid. So you have the 101 with a fair number of vehicles on it. And the goal is to share the burden with side streets. So the first grid shows a bunch of cars on the 101 as we see now, very few through our neighborhoods. Now on the east and west sides of the 101, especially in the Leucadia area, all the way close to downtown, it's a lot of the streets don't even have sidewalks. So we're talking about Hymettus, Eolis, Hygeia on the east side, and then over to Neptune and all the cross streets there. And so the goal of this notion is to share the burden. So many of the cars come off of the 101 and they become cut through traffic, and that's supposed to be a positive change. And I don't support that. It has to do with now, reducing lanes. And when you reduce lanes, you're squeezing a tube of toothpaste, there's backup. And so the notion of Strodes is supposed to absorb some of that overflow.
Yeah, and I just want to say, because I live in District 2 and we're all along Coast Highway, that impacts our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Lori, none of our neighborhoods in Encinitas can do that, except the ones that were planned from the start, like Village Park, where everything has sidewalks, the roads are wide enough. But Olevenheim can't take that. Cardiff can't take it either.
Well, and I'll go a step further. It's directly in opposition of our general plan. I mean, it is diametrically opposed as a policy to our general plan that is currently it's the city's constitution. And if you go to the circulation element, which is a component of the general plan, go to policy 2.4, I'm going to quote it, read it to you, because I think it's so great and I've used it so many times over the years. When considering circulation patterns and standards, Primary consideration will be given to the preservation of character and safety of existing residential neighborhoods, period.
Yes.
Where conflicts arise between the convenience of motorists and neighborhood safety / community character preservation, the latter will have first priority. If that doesn't sum it up, nothing does. And
Thanks for the
that is,
reminder.
that's like the diametrically opposed to that policy.
Thanks. But you guys, the thing is, we're singing to the choir here, and then we're singing to people who can't wait to get on our backs. We need to get this to the uninformed. So that's what we all have to do with our signs, and whether it's your district or not, we all care about what we care about. And it isn't about your district, it's about the community. So we got to get that out there.
Well,
Thank-
Lori, I think we have a lot of listeners tonight
Thank you.
that are
Yeah.
here just to learn about us and our position.
So cool.
So I think we're getting there.
I'd just like to add that it is so irresponsible to encourage people to cut through traffic in residential neighborhoods. If you've ever seen a child that's been hit by a car, you know how insane that is to want that. Our
Yes.
streets are so narrow. If someone steps between two parked cars, there's no chance.
Thanks.
I think they really got to think about that.
And Lori, to your comments, we're hoping that everyone here has enjoyed the program and will tell their friends and their neighbors. And when we're advertising this on Facebook and other venues, that they are piping in and encouraging people from either side and all sides and every neighborhood to come on board and join us. Lori, I'm going to move on and see if there's anybody else, because we're going to get to wrapping up the meeting. So thank you again. Anybody else have a question? Otherwise, we are going to wrap it up.
No, we've got Peter Cole. Sorry, it's like watching a movie. Peter's waving his hand.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, he's on mute.
I'm going to unmute him.
All right.
Peter, see if you can unmute.
I'll unmute him.
There
we
you go. There you go.
It's been an interesting session tonight, and I know this zoning and building of so many units that are going to totally mess the city up. There's another thing that I found out about last week. I don't know how many of you sat in on Captain Taft's presentation on law enforcement within the city. And that I found out from Julie and other people that we have at least 2 members of council, one of them being the mayor. They want to defund the police. And to me, that is extremely scary. You know, they're saying, well, our crime rate is very low. Well, one reason the crime rate is low, that the captain has the people to enforce the laws. If we cut the cost of services within Encinitas, that is really going to make things a lot worse. And I think that you folks that are running for council and mayor need to really emphasize this to the whole community. I don't think the majority of Encinitas is in favor of defunding. And I think we need to get the word out there and say, look, folks, you have these people in city government now that want to do it. We got to get them the hell out of there.
Peter, I'm definitely
Here's
not
my
in favor of
French.
defunding on any level. I think when you boast about your city having the lowest crime rate in the county, we're doing everything right. The old adage of if it works, don't fix it. I'm all about that. So I'll pass it to the other 2.
Yeah, it seems to me if you think there's an issue or if you suspect there is, go directly to your captain and speak with him about what's happening in Encinitas. Say, hey, you know, I support certain movements, I support such certain causes, so do my constituents. What do I tell them? What assurances can I give them to tell them, let them know we're in good communication with one another and that their ideas are respected and considered. And so I don't think that's happening, and that's unfortunate. That would be my approach, the direct one.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to move on now to Ron. I think, Ron, do you want me to unmute you? Would you like to, I think you'll have to unmute yourself at this point.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have a question for you, Cindy, I think. I'd like to know if I want to go to my neighbors and ask them to see this program. Is there any way is there a recording anywhere that they can tune into, since I don't think they participated today? I looked at participants, I didn't see any of the neighbors in my street, but they may very well be interested, especially living in Oliebenheim. So I'm wondering, is there a way that is there an address that I can direct them to?
You know, that's a very good question, and we're still figuring it out. And I will get back to you on that. I'm not sure how to do it, though I think we can. And I know that we do want more of the residents, not just participating, but being able to review everything that's been discussed. But I have your email address, and I will get back to you directly, as well as I suspect what we'll do is we'll make either a link available or the recording available through some type of a social media avenue. I think that the files are way too big to be emailing. So we'll have to figure out how we can do it so that it is actually accessible. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Good? All right, folks, we are running a little bit late, so we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, Bruce. It was great to see
Thank you.
and very, very informative. Thank you, panel members. You guys are great. I look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks. Invite your friends. Let us know what you think. We are still working on what our next event will be about, so stay tuned. We'll be making that announcement very shortly, and that next meeting will be on August 13th. And for now, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.